Welcome to Daily Life Connection. Thanks for joining us today. Let's look today at God, the God of the orphan. There is a lovely verse in John chapter 14 where God talks about, or Jesus says, I will not leave you orphaned. I will not leave you orphaned. I'm not going to abandon you. And then in Psalm, I believe it's 68, God is called the father of the orphan, the father of the orphan. Now, in order to understand this well, we need to understand the culture of that day when Jesus spoke and said, I'll not leave you abandoned or orphan. Because in those days, if for some reason a father and mother died or whatever, often the child was left orphaned or abandoned. We can't understand that in our culture, but that's the way it was. And they were often left to fend for themselves on the streets. And they were vulnerable to people that would use or abuse them. And it was a horrible life. To be abandoned, to have the people who love you most or should love you most, to just abandon you. A horrible, life-scarring kind of thing to happen. And Jesus said, I just want to promise you right up front, I'm never going to abandon you. I'm never going to abandon you. Because God is the God of the orphan. He's the father of the orphans. He is the one who is willing to take in the street kids. He's willing to take us in. So for me, there's two things about this today. One is he will never abandon us, no matter how badly we behave, no matter our failures. No matter, we are so valuable to him, he will not leave us. He will not leave us vulnerable to the attack of the enemy. We're never on our own. We need to remember that today, that no matter how alone you may feel, or how we may not even feel close to God today, but that doesn't change the fact that he is not abandoning us. He is with us. He is not leaving us vulnerable to the attack of the enemy. Now, we may feel sometimes like the enemy's attacking us and it's a painful time or a difficult time. But the reality is we are not alone in that. God is with us. Jesus said, I'm not abandoning you. His Holy Spirit is with us in that. And then, the other side of that is that he is willing to take in the orphan. You see, orphans were not assets to culture. They were a liability. They didn't earn money. If you took in an orphan into your home, it was going to cost you. And it was going to cost you probably in terms of finances, well, for sure, to feed and to clothe and to house and so on. But often, the orphans, the street kids, their behavior was not the kind of behavior that was an asset to a family. Years ago, I remember, and I think I've told this story before, but it's always worth telling again. A lady in our church who really, really, really loved cats. And, I'm not a cat lover myself, but I can understand a nice, cuddly, warm, domesticated cat. Yeah, I can see people liking that. But you know what? She one time she was concerned about the feral cats, and she would humanely trap them. And she got one, and it was just a horrible thing. It had lived in the wild and had probably been abused, and it hissed and it scratched and it clawed. And I remember saying to her, why would you keep that cat? It gives nothing back to you. And she just looked at me with these wide eyes like, what are you talking about? I keep it because it's a cat. I love cats. And I really believe that's part of what Jesus was communicating when he said, I'm not going to leave you orphaned. I'm not going to leave you out there like a feral cat, open to and vulnerable to the environment and animals or whatever. I am going to protect you even when you're a liability. Even when you're a liability, I'm going to take you in. God takes in street kids. God takes in stray cats. He won't leave us orphaned. That's really good news to you today. We never need to be in fear that we will behave in such a way that God is going to kick us out the door. You know what? That cat that Helen had, that thing, it would claw her, it would hiss, it was never domesticated, it never returned love to her whatsoever. But it was never in danger of being turned back out into the wild because she loved that cat. He will not abandon us. He will not leave us as orphans because he loves us that much. That's wonderful news for you and I today. Well, let's think about that and give him thanks and rejoice in the fact that our home is secure in him. Our family position is secure in him because he will never cast us out. He'll never abandon us. He'll never leave us as orphans. Good news today. God bless. We'll talk again tomorrow.